Hello and welcome to the February .NET user group meeting. Is anybody out there? Let's see if we can get our stuff set up. So let's see, turn our guests on so y'all can speak if y'all need to, but I want to welcome everybody to our February .NET user group meeting. We have a great show planned for everyone. It's going to be a long one, so I hope y'all stick it out with us. If not, per usual, it will be on demand tomorrow. I don't know, at some point whenever I get in there and click the go live button. Let's see. So first off, I'll introduce myself. My name is Brian McCoy. I am the leader of the Baton Rouge .NET user group, and I will be your host for tonight. With me, I have Andie Andrews. Oh God, I can't remember. She will be speaking to us about microservices and why big tech uses them, sharing her experience working with microservices and to decompose a large-scale monolith application. I also have John DiOriocourt. People may know him as Kibner or whatever from our Discord channel. He's been bringing us along with his Gatsby site. So tonight he's going to be presenting us that Gatsby site and MDX. It can be used together to create documentation site where all content pages are generated using Markdown syntax and embedded JSX for custom React components. And then we also have Jeremy Knight with us. He is the leader of the Home and Thibodeau user group, .NET user group, and he's also a regular speaker on our show or stream, whatever you want to call this. So let's see, what else do we have? I would like to direct y'all to the YouTube chat and Discord. If y'all have any questions, we'll be here to relay them to our speakers. So feel free to type away in either one. It could be Discord or on the YouTube chat. Jeremy was also nice enough to set up a live stream chat, a voice chat. So if y'all want to jump in there to discuss what's going on, feel free to do so. Let's see. Again, usually we have upcoming events. They keep sneaking by me. I know the analytics group is having a meeting sometime soon. We'll see if we can get that info for you and post it on all of our social media sites. Also, be sure to check out our social media sites. You can follow us on Twitter at the BRDNUG. You can also go to our meetup page to find out more information about when our upcoming streams are going to be. I'll get those links posted in the chat as soon as I get around to it. Let's see, what else do we have? As usual, call for speakers is open. If you want to come on stream and tell us about some awesome technology you're working on, we have some dates available. We are filling up. We have some really good speakers coming up for us, including tonight. So be on the lookout for future scheduled events. And again, if you want to come on stream and share some technology with us, we will be happy to have you. So just reach out to us in Discord or on Twitter or in the chat. I'll come and find you. It's okay. Let's see. Another thing we like to do, I know hiring season is hot and heavy right now. So if any of you are looking for a job or looking to get someone hired or hire somebody on, please use the live chat feature in YouTube. You can also post in our Discord. We welcome any and all job opportunities that you have. We want to make sure we find the right fit for the right people. So any assistance we can give, we like to do that. Let's see, what else do we have? I don't know, Jeremy, am I missing anything?
They got a .NET event coming up.
There's there it is. .NET Conf is doing their Windows conference, right? And I believe
focus on Windows. And they do have some Entity Framework stuff that I'm probably going to go to, but I think the majority of it's based on Windows, like WinForms, WinServices, that kind of stuff.
Nice. Where is that
at? It'll be live streamed.
Everything Microsoft is virtual.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
They also Ignite also was announced today, I guess, or you can start registering for it. So be sure to be on the lookout. Go register for Ignite. I know it's not necessarily the most developer friendly, but hey, it's something. So they'll have cloud architecture and probably some other things. So before we get started, Let's see. Andy, would you like to say anything? Introduce yourself, or?
I have some of that in my presentation, but I'm Andy. I work with Paylocity. They are a big tech company out of Chicago, Illinois area. I'm from Louisiana. I work in Louisiana remotely. I've been with them for 4 years, and I'm excited to be presenting about what I've learned and I know about microservices and kind of why so many big tech companies use it and kind of a lot of misconceptions about it. So thank you for having me here today.
Awesome. Glad to have you. All right, Jeremy, you want to say anything? Introduce yourself for the people who don't know you.
I think you said a lot. Just helping out today. I'll kind of be moderating, watching chats and stuff like that. Long-time developer, run the .NET user group out of Houma-Thibodeau, which right now we're kind of putting on hold since we're going virtual, trying to make this a more Louisiana-based thing, not just Baton Rouge and everything. I actually am on the North Shore right now, so
yes,
about it for me.
Sounds good. All right, John, I saved you for last for a reason. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and when you're ready, you can share your screen, and we can go ahead and get this started.
Sure. My name is John Doriacourt. I work as a consultant, have for the last several years, and I'm about to start a new position with Able Solutions in about 2 weeks. I actually took advantage of discussing job hunting with our good friends on the Discord, and they helped point me in some different directions and really helped me get started and improve my resume and get ready for everything. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Awesome. I'm glad we could help. That's what we're here for. So
yeah, congrats on that too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So when you're ready, go ahead and share. We'll transition over.
All right, I'm sharing.
The floor is yours.
All right, excellent. So me and my friends, we were wanting to play a new tabletop game. This particular, a Star Wars Edge of the Empire RPG. And unfortunately, this system, it has a lot of source material, a lot of books. And it was kind of difficult to like flip through all of them and like reference things and figure out where we want to need, because they sometimes like duplicate content, or you can't find like all the content in a single book. It's spread out across multiple books. So we started looking to see if maybe there was an SRD, a resource document, a system resource document for this game. And doing Googling, we couldn't find any. There's some that exist for, for like D&D and Pathfinder, but we couldn't find any for this Edge of the Empire game. So I figured, well, let's go ahead and create our own. And I was wanting to learn more about Gatsby and static site generation and GraphQL anyway, so this would serve as a good challenge for me. And while I was brainstorming about how I'd go about it, I realized this is a lot of content. I don't want to have to do this all by myself. So I was thinking and researching, like, how can I make this so that non-developers, so my friends, could help me put in content? And I knew that Gatsby supported generating pages from Markdown files, but what I eventually found out was that there's a plugin that allows you to generate pages from MDX files. MDX is basically Markdown with React. It allows you to essentially just write your normal Markdown files, but you can mix in React components inside of it. And that I figured would do us a lot of good if we ever came up with anything that would need like a custom kind of solution. I could code my own React component and have the users create the content easily. Well, what ended up happening was I did a couple of sample pages in Markdown, and my girlfriend, who's the GM, ended up making all the content for us anyway. And if you look at my browser, you can see kind of the final result. So all that she did actually was just create the Markdown content, like the actual page content. The navigation that you see here was automatically generated by the framework. And if I go ahead and click into a page like this core rules page, this table of contents right here actually is showing all the pages in white text and all the headings in gray text of the pages underneath it as well. And this is also automatically generated. And if we go ahead and click on one of these, like say, let's click on negative dice, it'll automatically take us to that page and to that specific header. And if we scroll up on the page, as you create headings, it'll automatically create tables of contents as well. And again, the content creator does not have to manage this at all. It happens automatically. Same thing with the breadcrumb trails up here. And we use the React parts to make things like I made it easy for her to made it easy for content creators to use SVG icons for things like these dice symbols that you see here. That way she can just do a simple little tag and include it and automatically just put in there. She doesn't have to worry about anything, complicated. It's just quick and easy. And so I'm going to go ahead and now kind of just show you guys how to use this framework. I have it up on GitHub. I can link it after the project if you want to use it yourself, and just show you how you would go about doing this. So if you download my GitHub project, you clone it and install the packages and run it. This is what you're greeted with, this page right here. And to create this page, all the pages, if you look in the Explorer over here, we have a content folder, and anything under the pages folder inside the content directory is what will be rendered. The only thing that's really important is that it has that .mdx extension. But as for the page itself, this is what they look like. This section at the top right here, this is what's called the front matter. It's you kind of think of it like metadata for the page. The title is self-explanatory. So you can see it says home right there. So if we actually change it, like hit page, you'll notice that the site should reload and say home page. Oh. Yeah, there we go. There we go. It says home page now. So if you take it away, sometimes Gatsby is a little bit slow, but there we go. This right here, we're using Markdown syntax to create a header. That's what these hash symbols for. These things right here, these are each React components actually, and they represent each of these dice symbols. So D1 for one-sided for the result of number 1 on a 6-sided die, etc. This is another React component. Gatsby has a special image library that they use that allows you to like optimize images, and so this specialized React component takes advantage of that. But if you want to create a new page, so let's go ahead and do that. You would just create a new file. You'll call it whatever you want. So we're just gonna call it examplepage.mdx. Not too important. Then we do the 3 dashes for the front matter, and we call it, let's just call it example page. Why not? Quick and easy, simple. We hit save, and you can see it automatically showed up in the navigation right here. You can go ahead and click it, and here you go. This is the title. We already have the breadcrumb automatically generated. It's good to go. If you want to easily add another heading, just add some content, just type in some content, just whatever you want, hit save. But you can see it automatically added that. So you call it something else, content heading, and you'll see it automatically changes right there, automatically handles all that for you. Let's create a couple other pages so I can show what display order does. It would help if I did what I said and put the there we go. And then let's add a third one. And as you can see, they appear in this navigation. So by default, everything appears in alphabetical order. You see EST. But if you want something to, you want to move something, that's what that display order is. So we just type in, so this is the second page, display order. So if we want to move it in front of the example page, we can just give it any number. So let's just give it 1. We hit save. You see it automatically moved up. And again, you just click on any of these, and you'll go ahead and get that. Made automatically render and do all the links for you. You can also do subdirectories. The way you would do a subdirectory, or like a subpage, is you would create a new directory and you name it the same as the page that you want to put it under, the file name. So if we want example page to have some subpages, we would create a new directory called example page. And we can just add another little MDX file there. So we can just call it example subpage.mdx. And you can see there's this chevron that appeared all of a sudden. You can click it, and now you can see the subpage. Click the subpage, there it is. And there's the parent page, and go ahead and click that, etc. Now, if you want to, this table of content, whenever the table of contents displays, it displays according to whatever the headings are on that page. If the page that it's looking at does not have any headings, it'll go ahead and use the headings of all the subpages. So the way we can do that, see how we have this content heading right here? We just go ahead and remove this. So we're removing all the headings from the example page. And so now, once we hit save, it links to the subpage. And if we add a new heading to the subpage, so new heading on subpage, you can see that we get the navigation for that too. Really easy. So that's the general features and how it generally works, or how it works from the content creator's perspective. And the other thing, like I said, is just the React component. So if we just want to, use a React component, we can just type in, D4 is the name of one. So, oops, there we go. This is on the subpage. I guess it would help if I think it's capital. There we go. Automatically appeared. Now how I kind of set this up, got this to work, there were a few things. Primarily there were some key packages. So in addition to what you would normally install with a Gatsby site, you would also need to install MDX-JS/MDX and also /React. Those are the things that actually will translate .mdx files for you. Then there's the Gatsby plugin MDX, which kind of serves as like the communication layer between Gatsby itself and the MDX feature. Then what I also have installed to get a lot of this to work is these remark auto link headers. And what these for, so you notice whenever I go over here, how it has this little chain link icon. It means that you can link to it. And basically what this plugin does is automatically generate the URL for all the headings, the IDs, everything you need for the headings to make them automatically link. And then you need Gatsby source file system, which is used so that Gatsby knows where to look at to build your site, what folders that your content is at to build. But those are the key packages to make all this work in addition to the standard Gatsby stuff. And for anyone who doesn't know what Gatsby is what's called a static site generator. Essentially, you actually do end up compiling a website, but it doesn't have like a server. There's no server API that you interact with. Essentially, Gatsby looks at all of your source files and your content and all that stuff, and it automatically generates every page that could possibly be made for you. And this is useful because you can install it on essentially like serverless systems. I think it usually runs on top of Node.js, but you don't really interact with it. It's just a static site. It's just simple HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It doesn't need any special communication. So it's easy to find free hosting for them, and they're also very quick because it doesn't have to make a request to a server in order to generate the page. Everything is already pre-generated, already there. That's why it's so fast. But for how these pages get generated, so let's go ahead and look. So first off, we need to configure these plugins. And that's where you go to this Gatsby-config file. So you have this plugin section right here, and this is a list of all the plugins that are configured. Remember before I said how the Gatsby source file system was an important package? this is what it's used for. So we basically set up some some options for it to tell it where to look. So this underscore dir name, that's just kind of like, you know, where your root directory is at. So it's going to look in /source/images, which you can see is /source/images is over here, but this is for something different. But we're looking for our pages. So our pages are right here, this section. So /content/pages. This is where we were looking at before. And we called it content pages. The reason why you give it a name is because Gatsby takes this information and it uses a query engine called GraphQL to build it so that you can query this information later. So this is like the GraphQL page, and you can look at all your files here. So let's see. We should be able to look at them all in there, and I'll show you some queries that we wrote later for this. But yeah, so we set up the source file system to look at our content pages. We set up the MDX plugin right here as well, and then we load the plugin for the plugin called Gatsby Remark Auto Link. So those are like the key configuration options. Now, once that's done, we need to go into Gatsby node. Gatsby node. So whenever Gatsby looks at your code base, it creates nodes. A node is essentially like each kind of quote unquote page that it will use to build. And we kind of need to intercept that building process in order to make sure it builds our pages how we want so we can do things with them later on. So we need to go into this onCreateNode event. So onCreateNode is just one of the Gatsby events that it calls whenever it's trying to create a node. And so what we do is on this event, we go ahead and we look at the node that it's trying to create. And we look for specifically if it's trying to create an MDX, or if it's looking at an MDX node, a file that is basically an MDX file. And if it is, we go ahead and we use another built-in function to create a unique slug. A slug is the part after. So in this example, if you look at my browser over here, how we have the full URL. The slug is what comes after the domain name, so after localhost port 8000. So on this page, the whole slug would be example page / example subpage. That's what the slug is. And this is important because this is how we make sure there's a unique route to each page. And so we're basically just going ahead and we're filling in, we're creating a new field in the GraphQL query that GraphQL is going to use for the slug. We're going to call it slug, and we're going to get the value that we create over here. Now, once all the nodes are created, then Gatsby will go ahead and create the pages. All right, so remember before I told you that we were using GraphQL? That's exactly what this is over here. So we can actually copy paste this, I believe, this query right into GraphQL. And it should, oops. There we go. And you can see it kind of has all the information for all our pages. Let's take out body just so we don't have to look at it because it's a lot of stuff. But you can see here how it created slugs for all these pages. It also created titles for all the pages as well. That's based off that front matter that I told you about. That's what one of the plugins generates for us, is that front matter. And yeah. So this query, this GraphQL query, basically gets all this information. It gets the unique ID of the node. It gets the title that is listed in the front matter. It gets the actual rendered body of the node, and it gets the slug of the node for the page. And then what we do is we go through each of those nodes, each of those little records that I just showed in the previous screen on my browser. And we go ahead and we create a page on it. We make the path of the page equal to the slug. we then use, so this right here, this component, this is basically what are we using to render that page? What are we using to generate that page? It's kind of like it's really more like what template are we using to create that page? And so we basically pointed it to the file in our source code that we use as the template. And I'll go ahead and show that later. And this context is what context do we pass into that template? Basically, like what information do we want to pass into that template so that it has an idea of what page is trying to be rendered. And the only things that we really need is the ID, the front matter, and the body. All right, so that's like, so again, just to kind of like summarize, when Gatsby builds the site, it has to build every possible page because this is a static site generator, so it has to build everything that it could possibly ever need. And part of that process, we are piggybacking on two of the events during that process. One on create node when it's trying to figure out which nodes to actually create. And we add our slug to each of those nodes. And then once it has all the nodes created, it then goes and creates pages. And it has a create pages event. And so then we query all the nodes in the system. And specifically, we are going to be using that slug that we added to the node previously. And for each of those records, we're going to create essentially a new page using the component right here to this template to generate it, what it looks like. And so now let's go ahead and take a look at the component. So it's under source /templates /content page. And this is it. This is, for anyone familiar with React, this is, it's not too many components, but each component can be made of multiple components. So we're just kind of walk through here one step at a time. So remember that page context I talked to you about earlier? This context right here is passing in these fields into this page context variable. So we're going to be using that later on. So this use all MDX query, this is what's called a static query. A static query is something that Gatsby will run once whenever you build your site to get all the information. It's static, it's not going to change, it uses it once. And the reason why you want to do this is so that Gatsby doesn't try to run this query every time on each page, because that would take forever to generate everything. So you just run it once, and you can just kind of use the results again and again and again. And so what this use all MDX query, static query does, is it kind of go, again, it's very similar to what we use to create stuff. It goes through all the MDX pages, and it grabs the ID, the front matter, including the title and display order, and the slug, and the table of contents. And it's sorting them by the field slug over there. So let's go ahead and copy paste this so we can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. So this is the results of that use all MDX query. So again, you can see the unique ID of the page. You can see the title, display order if it's set. You see some of them don't have it set, some of them are null, some of them actually have a value. The slug of the page, and if there are any tables of contents. So tables of contents are usually created like once you start actually putting content on the page, including headers. That's where that table of contents comes from. All right. And so going back to here, so we have all our MDX pages right here. And the reason why we need all of these is because we need to build the navigation tree. I have some custom code to go ahead and do all that, but essentially that is going to, that build navigation tree is going to create the navigation that you see over here. So it needs, it needs to know every page in order to actually build it out. So that's why we do that. You can see right here we have the layout navigation tree. So layout itself is going to use that navigation tree, and the layout is made up of more things. And that's just kind of how these things go. But yeah, the navigation tree is passed all on down, and there's a whole bunch of other JavaScript that runs that will create that navigation for us. However, we can also use the navigation tree to figure out what node we are in. So we pass in that unique ID. We can figure out what current node we are in. And we need to know that so that we can go ahead and create the breadcrumb. So the breadcrumb, again, is this control right here. So if we know which current node that we are on, then we can start building this thing out. Because, again, the slug has the entire path, the entire page path. So right here, example page / example subpage. So we can use this information, since we know it is separated by slashes, we can use this information to build the actual breadcrumb. And then this is just actually how the layout of the page works. We have like our general parent layout. We have some search engine optimization stuff. The breadcrumb control goes right there. So we take the title of the page, and this is where we actually go ahead and put it in there. So you can see right here it says H2, typography H2. This is part of material UI. So if we actually inspect this element, you will see that it is H2, a header, and it's using all the typography stuff that material UI likes to do. And then we have a divider, and then table of contents, and then this right here is where the actual body of the Markdown file, or the MDX file, is actually rendered. So you notice that we pass it this provider components. And what this is important for, you can see we actually declare it up here. We pass it in what's called, what we call, MDX Customized Components and MDX shortcodes. So shortcodes is very easy to explain. You remember before how I showed you we could create, we could just call in a React component with just a simple tag like this. You can see this component is actually, I have it right here. And that's what, and essentially anytime someone calls D4, they are getting all this code automatically put in there. And so these shortcodes allow us to expose these custom React components to the content creator so that they can easily use it. So let's go ahead and explore it. So right now, this is a list of all the shortcodes that we support. So if basically the user can open a tag and use any of these without having to import anything into their MDX file or do anything like that, they can just instantly use them and be good. So that's what that's about. The MDX Customized Components. So again, like I said, we were using material UI. The way Markdown normally works is it takes the Markdown syntax, Markdown content someone writes, and it translates it into HTML. What this MDX Customized Components does as part of this MDX.js thing is it lets us alter how that HTML is created, or take that HTML and turn it into something else. And that's what these customized components do. So one of the easiest things to look at is this table row. So you can see right here how I have a lot of different MDX header, MDX, all this MDX stuff. Normally this would just be HTML. So normally a table row, you can see right here, TR, that's what you would normally see. But anytime a TR element would be rendered, I'm instead rendering this. And so I'm able to essentially change the background color of every other row to be, change background color of every other row. That's how you would do that. If it was just normal TR, if I didn't do that, it would just be a normal table row, no styling, look kind of ugly. So if we, let's see, let me bring up the other side to kind of give you an example. So you can see right here how we have, some table rows right here and how each one is a different background color. But we also get other stuff too, because we're using material UI. So we're using material UI's table rows. And it comes with some other stylings and things of that nature as well. So again, So MDX shortcodes is a way to expose React components so that the content creator can easily use them without having to do any imports, which might be kind of confusing to someone who's not a developer. And it also allows us to, we can also use MDX Customized Components, which allow us to change how the Markdown will render elements. In this case, like I said, we mostly change it from rendering just straight HTML to rendering the equivalent in Material UI. But yeah, that's basically how this framework functions. The one big thing that is missing, and I am currently working on it, is of course search. If you want to have a documentation site, you need to have a good search. And what I plan to use is a search engine called Algolia, but it works a little bit differently than most search engines I've seen before. It doesn't crawl your website. Instead, you build a bunch of JSON objects that contain the content of your website, and you send Algolia those JSON objects, and it will search on those JSON objects whenever someone queries for a search engine. And Material UI actually uses this search engine on their own website. So you can look up here, you can look up like divider, and because you can put in multiple attributes for their search engine, you can get back your search results in a way like this, so you can kind of customize your results a lot more to make it easier to search for documentation purposes. But that's the next step. But yeah, if there's any questions, let me know. If there's anything someone wants to see me try to do in the framework to see how it works again, if I need to explain anything more, please ask.
I have a quick question. Your GitHub. What is your GitHub?
Yeah, github.com/kibble. Let's see if I can bring it up for you real quick.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Right under the bus.
Yeah, so let's see. This is the GitHub for this particular site. I tried to also create the READMEs to kind of explain how to use it as well. One other thing that I didn't touch on with customization is the theme. So we're using Material UI theme, and if you look in the source code, there is a Gatsby-theme, blah, 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 blah. It needs to be named this for whatever reason the plugin requires the directory be named this exact thing. But you can look up the theme.js, and this is where you can control everything. It has a whole bunch of stuff. I don't want to get too into it because it's kind of out the scope, but it has pretty much all the style and customization that you would want.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
And, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Where should I just go ahead and link this in the Discord, or?
I think Jeremy got you. Jeremy linked it for you.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me present.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So yeah, go ahead and if you want to stop sharing, or Andy, if you want to go ahead and start sharing your screen.
Sure.
Look at that timing. I got lucky there.
Let's see. Sorry about that. I'm going to switch screens real quick too. Which screen do you see? There we go.
We're good. We see it.
All right. I'm excited to be here. I'm really glad that you asked me to speak about something that I really love talking about. Microservices and why big tech uses them. There's a lot of misconceptions, and the word microservices is so loosely thrown around. So I just kind of want to present it on it as to why so many big tech companies are doing it. So a little bit about me. I am a full stack software engineer, and I work for a really, really amazing company, Paylocity. We build an enterprise HR and payroll management software. I've been at it for about 15 years now, and I spent about 11 of those years here in Louisiana. Worked with a lot of great engineers here. I'm a Microsoft certified professional, and I'm a Microsoft specialist in C#. I did want to put this up to share about Paylocity. It's an amazing place to work. We are hiring software engineers, data scientists, team leads, product designers. If anyone's interested in a career where You get to work with cutting edge technologies. You get to collaborate with engineers all over the country, and you're empowered in your career growth. I really want to invite you to come apply. If you have any questions about Paylocity, or even during this presentation, you want to hit me up and discuss some of the things that I'm presenting about, feel free to email me or contact me on LinkedIn. And again, if you want to apply, I'll definitely help you walk through the interview process and coach you through it. So microservices and who uses them. There's a lot of big names here. Netflix, Amazon, Uber, Paylocity on there. All these companies had the same problem, and microservices was the solution. So the question to ask is, what was their problem? Their problem was they all had monolithic applications that was preventing and stunning their release pipeline. I know at Paylocity, before we adopted this architectural pattern, we were only able to deploy like once or twice a year. We had different teams working on different modules, and there's a lot of toe stepping, and all the teams had to have their feature work in before we could release, and all teams had to have people available for deployment. So deployments were a big deal. And it was really stunning our growth and our development to really deliver new features to our clients on a rapid basis. So microservices is an architectural design pattern that helps dismantle and decompose applications into like modular domain-centric services that do one thing well by breaking it into smaller components instead of like one giant deployment. James Lewis, Martin Fowler, they speak a lot on this topic. Look them up. They define it as a suite of small services, each running in its own process and communicating with a lightweight mechanism, often like HTTP resource APIs. These services are built around business capabilities, and they're independently deployable by fully automated deployment machinery. So your release pipeline is just rapid. You're able to get releases out. We deploy now weekly. Teams across the company. We put out features several times a month now. And for Paylocity's needs too, we chose to also go with RESTful APIs. So again, this is the end result when you start adopting this pattern. And imagine a large-scale enterprise application composed of smaller fragments where it's more manageable code, and each service or module can be deployed, rebuilt, redeployed, and managed independently, rather than having one big monolithic deployment and application, a single tiered application. And the really great thing is that independent teams can use whatever technologies they want. So you're kind of getting into like a polyglot system where you can have different, each team is going to use the technologies that best suit the need to deliver the feature they want, or the feature they want to deliver to your clients. So again, microservices architecture enables continuous deployment. It also enables small, agile, cross-functional teams, which helps with continuous delivery and deployment. So with all that said about monoliths, I want to make sure that I make one thing clear. Monoliths are not bad. Not at all. They definitely have their place, and monoliths are the choice, or can be a great choice for the business needs at the time. I think Martin Fowler says it best when he says, don't even consider microservices unless you have a system that's too complex to manage as a monolith. The majority of software systems should be built as a single monolith application. Pay attention to good modularity within that monolith, but don't try to separate it into separate services, microservices, until it's just unmanageable. Simon Brown says, if you can't build a well-structured monolith, what makes you think microservices is the answer? And I'm gonna tell you, when you break things down into microservices, in a way, you're building kind of mini monoliths. So what Simon Brown is saying here makes a lot of sense. So see here on the left is a basic monolithic architecture. And so a monolith is like a single tiered application. We have a single database. Everybody's using the same database. And in this example that I pulled off cloudathon.blog, you can see it looks like they're using APIs. Just because we're using like RESTful APIs or services, that is not microservices architecture. And I think that's how that term loosely gets like thrown out there. And really, this is more, this is a microservices architecture where this has been now decomposed into smaller microservices that it can be served up to either web applications like MVC, single page apps, mobile apps. And again, you've got a bunch of small deployments to where you can have this continuous delivery. The question is, how do we get from point A to point B? So I can tell you at Paylocity kind of what the journey has been for us, or what I've learned from working there. And we have some of the best principal engineers there. They are at Paylocity, our principal engineers got together, they analyzed our database and they cross-referenced it with our business modules. They were able to identify domains and associate all the data structs within the domain. And then they assigned ownership. So your step one is just analyzing your data structs, analyzing your data like in reference to your modules and your business needs, and giving that an ownership to teams. And again, domains should be clearly defined to reflect team ownership. Here in figure 1, I did this fictitious student facility management software. So we say we have this software that is for online colleges, and those are our clients, and we're rapidly growing. We can't keep up with the feature work. Again, our deployments are backed up, so it's time. It's time to split this out. So we're going to look at our database, and here you see an example where we pulled it out, and we have a security domain, we have a students domain, we have a facility domain, a curriculum domain. And so the way these would reflect modules is you're going to have it like a student management module. You know, you have a facility management module or a curriculum module. So the other thing about this is domains can also consist of subdomains. And I want to tie the next bullet point with this as well. Domains own their own data. However, the domains are not always the source of truth for all data. Because to me, these are different approaches that you can take, and they're kind of, they work hand in hand, but there's different ways you can do it. And so for the subdomains, let's look at the student domain. Say I have a student schedule API that I'm spinning out. But in order for that student API, and I want to do some include the curriculum, I'm now have a dependency on the curriculum domain. So I need to have one of two approaches. I can create a subdomain, which is student curriculum, and I can access the curriculum API or microservice to be able to serve my data up, or I can use the approach of where I use either like a message broker, RabbitMQ, SQS, Redis, where I'm porting that data over into the student system. Now, either one of these approaches can be done, but the important thing is when you port over data or you synchronize with other teams or other domains, is that you don't own that data. And so that data should be able to be completely removed and replaced if you don't own it. So that's an important, I guess, factor about that. So moving on from domains. So the one thing that we did next, so we defined it, we kind of identified, we told teams, here, you own this data now. And let me go back real quick, because I want to cover too. When you break this up and you give this to teams, you're like, hey, here, this is your data. You own this section of data in our monolithic database. It's your job to come up with a strategy to get out of this monolith, create some microservices. And that generally happens where you'll create your services and they connect to your monolith. This definitely doesn't happen overnight. And then after they create their services, you're also working on your database and synchronizing with your monolith. And then eventually you're able to switch out your APIs and get off where it's not accessing the monolithic database anymore. And now, boom, you've just slowly migrated off the monolith application in that domain. So The next thing is after you identify, you want to do some prep work before you actually dive into doing the work, and you want to set teams up for success. And that's one thing Paylocity, I think, did very well. They address blockers in the UI. They create what we call app shells. And what this allowed was for teams to have the ability to rapidly spin up a new application, and like an MVC application if they wanted to. They could use a single page app. They could, such as they can use Knockout, they can use Angular, they could use React, and so forth. That front end framework is up to them to choose whatever technology they want to use. They also created a lot of core frameworks to make spinning up those new product features and these applications we want to migrate, where we can like build this portion of a module and we can toggle the feature on fast, you know. So and I say it like it happened overnight, but it took us, we're still working on it. It's been years, and it's a gradual process. So and when rolling out new architecture or framework, one thing that I think Paylocity does well is you consider the developer experience. Because if you're not setting up teams for success, you're not creating good documentation about, hey, here's how you do this easily, then your teams are going to struggle, and it's going to you're going to have chaos. So, and the next thing is, with setting teams up for success, you want to define your consistencies and your flexibilities. What does this mean? It means when you have autonomous teams that can do whatever they want, it can turn into the Wild West. So you want to let teams decide on their technologies that they want and how to what technologies they want to use to best meet the needs for the module they support. But you want to have some standards in place, because if you don't, it can have some harmful impacts. If you don't have some UI standards, if you don't have API guidelines, if you don't have any of these things in place, you're going to have inconsistencies in your application and your UI, and that will be a poor user experience. And know too, as these changes occur, there's a lot of storming, norming, and performing, because teams are going to have to work through this along with collaborating, and you have storming between teams and norming and performing, and then the company as a whole. The next thing I want to cover is a misconception about APIs when it comes to functions. Like, oh, you want me to just create a bunch of functions and call it microservices? I've heard this before. And it's like, no, that's not what we're doing here. What we are doing is creating a system of resources, not functions, where you can easily request any resource in your system. You would generally know, hey, this is the student API, and I just want to get a student object, and it's just an easy, I guess it's not functions. You're defining resources. And if anybody wants to talk to me more about this and why, I'll be glad to debate about it. So, defining API guidelines. There's a lot of documentation out there, and there's a lot of standards, and I think there's some flexibility in what you can do, but also what you just shouldn't do. You know, like for us, when we're defining domains, we pluralize our nouns. And also, you should never use verbs. Like, you know, building your routes where you would have like a student's domain, v1, student, get student. No, that if you don't have these consistencies and well-defined API guidelines as you're building these, eventually what you're going to develop is an API suite for your clients that you can sell as a feature so that they can integrate with your application. And if you don't have these kind of standards in place, you give an API suite to your clients and you got some routes that look like this and this, it's just not going to look professional. And it's hard when other teams, as you have these cross dependencies on teams, if you don't have consistencies, it would be frustrating to, like, one team does it one way and another team does it another way. So it's important to to have these types of standards outlined and available so that teams follow them. And more too, like the HTTP GET request message. These are the verbs. These are the actions that need to happen. And these are just, like I said, simple HTTP requests, curl requests that happen. Most of us know GET. Most of us know post, delete. I think there's a little bit of a lot of people aren't as familiar with what a patch is, but know the difference between a put and a patch. They're similar. They both do updates. But one thing about a put, it does a full replace. And a patch, I really like working with, I don't think we ever use patches, but mostly, we don't ever use puts. We mostly use patches. And what it allows you to do is do a partial update. Say I just want to update the name of a student. So I can create a patch object that sends that request, and I can update first name one time, last name the next time, the way that a patch request is developed. But it's only going to do a partial update where you're not updating the entire record in your database, and it'll take some weight because you have microservices. So it takes a little bit of weight off your data layer. So I'm almost finished with defining your API guidelines, but there's a few more slides. So the next thing I want to talk about again is creating those standards, because if you don't create these types of standards and you got one team that calls limit L, or if you don't have these standard structures in place, we're lucky. We have, we built a lot of core framework that enforces our standards. So we don't have to think of these things. We just reference, get a NuGet package, and we're able to just have these class objects that we need to build our routes as quickly as possible while following these standards. But you do want to think about how you're going to standardize pagination. What is your default page limit? So you're just going to let people, is there a maximum? Are you going to let people get 1 million records at a time? So you need to have some standards in place for teams, because teams will do that if you don't. They absolutely will. Simple filtering definitely should have some standards, because URLs have max lengths. You have to take these sort of things in consideration. As far as complex searches, complex searches are different. This is where you want to do like an and or a statement, and you want to search with a little bit of complexity. One of the approaches that we use at Paylocity is we use a post for this, and a post is designed for a create route. And so what we do is we create a search where we do a post. We send our complex search object, and we get our search query, but we return a search. We cache it, and we return a search key. So that when you're doing subsequent GET requests, after that, you create your search, and then after that, you use your GET with your cache key. And all you have to do is page through it as the user pages, and it's much faster. Let's see. And then again, I guess you want to know how you're going to handle like sub or nested resources, and also you want a partial response strategy, because I may just need a few fields off of one of your resources. I don't need a whole resource object. So I just want to call your API and get 2 fields. So having some standards in place on how you're going to do that. This right here should be fields, not really nested resource, but I would expect to see like first name, last name in a comma delimitered fashion. And then lastly, you want to make sure your response objects are standard, because if you have teams building these microservices and everybody's not on the same page and you have different formatted response objects, it's just when you work with each other, or when you make these APIs public, it's not going to be good. So the other great thing about response wrappers, they communicate your errors, your 400 errors, so your clients to each other. So I'm on one team, another team, I'm using their API, and I'm like, I'm getting these errors. I'm able to clearly see in my 400 errors that it's because of me. I'm passing the wrong request in. So that's a well-designed microservice when I can say, hey, I requested this resource from this domain that I don't own, and it's clearly communicated to me why it's not working. So it's definitely good practice. And so also version management. If it's a breaking change, then you need a new route version. You should really think about your routes as you put them in, and the resources you're serving up to your applications or to other domains. Your route should be clearly defined. You shouldn't really have to change much about the route itself. But if you're changing things about the response object, what gets field names, or you're restructuring things, that's a breaking change for any team that's dependent on your resource. So make sure that you're handling your route versions properly. Also, with managing versions and also managing all these APIs, you'll probably need an API gateway management tool as well. So one point I want to make is that going from a monolith to a microservice architectural pattern is not just it's not just code structures. It's not just about your application. It's an organizational change. And I don't know if you're familiar with Conway's Law, but it states any organization that designs a system will inevitably produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. So as you're moving forward, how your organization structures teams matters, along with how teams knowledge share, communicate, and distribute information. So if you have all these autonomous teams developing various modules and an enterprise or large scale application, and teams work in silos and they don't communicate, you're likely going to end up with a lot of inconsistencies that impact your users and the overall quality of your product. So it's important to have good communication structures in place. And also how you structure your domains will also dictate that ownership, which is crucial to the success, because if you don't give us ownership of the data that needs to come out of there and be broken out, if there is no ownership to a resource domain, who owns it? There has to have ownership to it. So some things that Paylocity has done to kind of stay in line, and I love how we address like our communication across Paylocity. We have bi-weekly tech practice demos, and they're led by our principal engineers. And they come in and they show us all the cool things coming down the pipeline. Like, hey, these are the problems we're solving for all of our teams. We have a monthly dev COP meeting, and that's a core, core something of practices. I can't remember what the acronym stands for at the moment, but it's where all of the engineers like myself can go, and we have the opportunity to share our ideas of new things that we are trying out in our modules and our applications, and also things that we failed at. Because you want to stay agile. You're going to make mistakes. Teams try and fail, but what's important is that when you're taking a first attempt at something, that you learn from your mistakes, and then you also share it with other teams so that they learn from your mistakes. And when you're doing that across teams, you're just growing more rapidly. Another thing that we have every week is thank God it's Thursday. I know that acronym, but we meet every Thursday with our CTO, Ted Gady, and it's all of product and tech that gets together, and it's another information channel to keep everybody on the same page. We also have quarterly, all of product and tech has a gracious day of learning, which allows us to have like we used to do SQL Saturday. We used to have our tech conference, before COVID and all that happened, but now we can't. So our gracious day of learning quarterly is kind of like how we compensate for that and really share and just have just a day where we can just go into sessions, learn from each other, or even have our own learning tracks we want. And also, to kind of switching back to some of our guidelines and things that you need to consider, create those core frameworks for your APIs. You know, like decide how routes will be secured to prevent authorization access or unauthorized access. So all that stuff needs to be set up ahead of time. So when developers are doing this, you know, for us, it's amazing. We have a really great pipeline to where if I want to spin up a new API, I can do it so easily. I can create a new API project. All of my security frameworks are built in. All of my builds are done for me. And my deployment pipeline is set up. It's just streamlined. It's amazing. Also, you want to have standardized logging. Teams should be able to easily go into logs and determine what exceptions are happening. So when I say teams, I mean teams that are domains that are dependent on or getting data. They rely on you to get data. So you definitely need to make sure you have a system in place so that they can troubleshoot easily, so they can see what the problem is before they bring you a bug. And always consider the developer experience, because even as you're developing, if you're contributing to core frameworks for your company or you're building your resource APIs, you know, a developer is consuming that API. So you need to definitely always have a client-first mindset and think about who's using this tool, how can you make it easier for them to use, and, you know, how to set everyone up for success. Also, I think I mentioned this, determine if you want to use an API gateway. API gateways provide a single unified API entry point across one or more internal APIs. So it's a really great management tool. There's a lot of different tools out there. You'd want to kind of see what type of gateway, what technology you want to go with, but it really helps in managing that. It adds a layer of security and it helps you consolidate and manage your APIs better. And if you plan on exposing your APIs to your clients, it's essential. Integrating it into your release pipeline, it definitely creates some extra setup for teams that are a little painful. We have great setup, but I would say it has its downfall in that area, but it's well worth the payoff and what you get for it. And lastly, one of the downfalls about going to a microservices architecture is that it has latency. So you need to have a good cache strategy in place. Teams need to know, like, you need to have a good, like, base distributed cache framework that teams can plug into. You also need to have those standards defined as well about what is the standards for the cache lifetimes. You want to consider cache busting. You know, if you need to get a resource and I know it's cached and I want to force it, like when does that happen? And again, we solved a lot of our problems by building core frameworks. And what's really great is most of our core frameworks we can all contribute to. So it's like internal open source framework that we can enhance, and so it's continuously growing and giving us more features that we can use. So I'm going to summarize it up real quick. Stay agile and do what works for your business needs. You know, with any kind of pattern, with any kind of, even like the different, I guess, methodologies, you want to do what works for your business and adopt and learn from what doesn't work and do what does work and improve and grow on that. Monoliths are not bad unless they aren't meeting your business growth. Microservice isn't just RESTful APIs. It's an architectural pattern. It's designed to decompose monoliths for faster delivery, agile autonomous teams, and continuous delivery. Your organization structure needs to match your architectural goals, and start with defining your domains and your standards and your guidelines. Also, monoliths are not decomposed overnight. It's a long game strategy. So it's definitely a commitment to go to, but it's well worth the investment and time that it takes to get there. I do have some suggested references to read. Software Architecture Patterns by Mark Richardson. Monoliths to Microservices by Sam Newman. And these are also some great links that you can go to really learn about the architectural pattern. And then lastly, if you have any questions, I'm all open. And you can always email me or contact me on LinkedIn. Again, if you're interested in coming on board at Paylocity, or you just want to talk about microservices or any technology, I would love to hear from you. And that's all I got. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Brian, if I can figure out how to hear anymore.
Yeah, sure.
Let me see if I can find that button again.
Once you stop sharing, let's see.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Nice. I think we may have lost John for the time being, but I know he was around listening, so he may pop back in a second.
No worries.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the presentation. I know I am stealing some of your ideas, so if not all of them. So I really appreciate it. Thanks to both of our speakers, John and Andie. If you want to throw your hat in the ring and you want to come on, we're really friendly. We're really helpful. All you have to do is join a Teams meeting. One thing I do want to do that I keep forgetting to, and because he said something, is shout out Jeremy Cronin, because he is the reason why you get newsletter updates, and he's the reason why the website stays up to date. So I really appreciate the help that he gives. So I just, he's not on the call, so sometimes I forget. I apologize for that, but it takes a village to run this bad boy.
Right.
So yeah,
definitely. And I want to be around to help you guys out whenever you want me to need speakers, and also just to help you manage the group. I'd love to be a part of it.
Yes, and actually, for those you don't know, Andie has been getting involved, and she's been helping out. Y'all may have seen her post on the Facebook page, obviously she's speaking tonight, so kind of a trial by fire thing we have going on. And not only that, for the user group, because I know Andie has spoken at SQL Saturdays before, but for the user group, John and Andie, this is both y'all's first time, I believe, right? Have you spoken at the user group before? Or?
I think I spoke at the user groups before, way back when, but it's been years back.
That's all right. Well, we'll count it. Since I've been here. So since I've been, we'll say, running the show. I always say if you could get fired from a volunteer job, I'd be a prime candidate.
That's great.
But
anyway, thanks for having us here today.
Awesome. Thanks for coming out. We look forward to hearing from you again, as well as John. John just posted in the YouTube chat that I know it was his first talk. So, but that's cool. Thanks y'all for coming out. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. Be sure to share, like the page, subscribe. Word of mouth is the best way for us to get out. So if you want to pass our info along to somebody, please do. Our stream has been growing. I think we're at 70 something subscribers. So I'm actually kind of impressed, because I didn't think we'd have any viewers ever, let alone a bunch of people subscribing and tuning in and watching our videos, even after our live streams. That's when we get most of our traffic. So, thanks again for everybody for coming out. We appreciate it. If anybody else doesn't have anything, Andie, thanks. John, thanks. Jeremy, always thanks for the help that you give to the user groups. So, if anybody's interested in speaking, you know where to find us. Discord. You can send us a message through Meetup, Twitter. If there's anything that I'm not mentioning and you want to use, please put it in the chat. We'll figure out how to get on there. So, is Andie on the Andie is not in the Discord yet. We're working on that, maybe. So, but we'll get her there. But yeah, again, thanks for everybody for showing up. We appreciate the time you spent with us, and we'll see y'all next month. Next month, we actually have a speaker. Some of you may remember him. I'm drawing a blank. He's from Lafayette. He spoke about Vue. Raymond Camden. He's actually going to talk about Jamstack. So that'll be next month. So hopefully y'all can tune in and check that out. So he's always a joy. So he's always fun to watch. Anyway, until next time, we'll talk to y'all later.